Good morning. It is Sunday sermon time. My favorite time because we are navigating these energies now. And these energies are, what are we up to now? You know what I mean? Do you remember the time space between 2020 and the present? Or maybe even just last year? Well, let me tell you a story like I'm going to be telling these stories about that time frame. People either remember it well or it's completely blacked out for most people. I'll tell you the story about the last time that I got my hands on an ecstasy pill. It would have been probably approximately April of 2022. My friend Nicholas, right, who we had so many problems with crystal meth, and we were with so many kids that were in and out of here trying to get themselves together. We were on hard drugs at the time, but at that time I had already quit doing crystal meth for probably about a month or a month and a half. So, and he knew that too, and it was rough. It was rough for all of us. It was especially rough. It was rough for me, but before I met him, it was extremely rough being married to someone that was so disrespectful, sold her body, was a user. And then there was this situation where God, I swear to God, sent him to me. God sent me an angel the day that he came to my house. And I know that it was all predestined. That's what we call the fur. So knowing that I hadn't done crystal meth in a while and that I didn't do crystal meth anymore, and actually when I first met him and I knew that he was something that I wanted to keep forever and ever, before I even stroked Simon's tail, he said, well, I really don't like girls that drink. I'm like, well, what would you think about dating me? Because what happened was he saw me online. He's like, I really like, your profile and stuff. He's like, I just kind of happen to find myself in a circumstance where I haven't had a place to live in a while. And I said, well, I happen to be in a circumstance where my whole family died, and things were spooky back then, you guys. Remember between 2020, even before then, I'm talking 2017, 2019, spooky, ominous shit happened on the daily. Do you know what I mean? And I have so many stories about that. But he lived up by Milwaukee or whatever. He says, well, I have friends down there, and I used to live down there. And I said, it would be good for me to just have somebody just live in the spare room. I'm like, you don't have to pay any rent. I know you're not making a lot of money. I'm like, don't worry about it. My house is paid for and stuff. I'm like, if you have a few bucks to get laundry detergent or stuff like that, that would be really nice. But I'm like, if you have no place to go, bud, come stay with me because shit is spooky and it's just me and my cat Simon here. And he's like, well, I have a dog named Blue. I'm like, will that be a problem? I'm like, of course not. So I remember he's like, well, my mom's gonna give me a ride from Milwaukee or whatever. And I'm like, well, and he's like, I'll be there at 9 o'clock tonight. And I'm like, well, if you get here sooner, I guarantee you I've got some kisses for you. And he was here by 9:30 in the fucking morning. And I remember my sink was clogged for 6 fucking months. I always have problems with the plumbing kind of in my kitchen. I have an old sink from the 70s, and there's no garbage disposal, nothing like that. And all throughout the time that people were living with us, that sink was out of order. But I had, for 6 fucking months, I couldn't, fix that sink, and I tried everything, plungers, everything. And it was kind of gross because he came here, and, it kind of smelled yucky, I had shit in my sink for, 6 months. I'm like, well, that's kind of embarrassing. But I have, incense and stuff, right? When he got here, and he was kind of ugh, that's kind of gross. And I'm just like, well, let me try it one more time to fix this fucking sink. So I had a thing that I was sticking down there, and seriously, 5 minutes after he fucking got here, the sink was fixed. And I was like, blah, blah, and all this shit went down the fucking drain. But so this ecstasy pill, he started bringing me more stuff like, he used to be like a coke dealer and stuff like that. No more is that a situation or an issue. That part of his life he kept away from me, but I did know that he was doing that, you know. So, and I am so grateful, whether you do it yourself or whether you have to go to rehab once or you have to go to rehab twice, do that for yourself, because of stories like this that we get to tell everyone. Tell the children, right, about how we beat addiction and how we understand what's truly important in life. Friendship is more important than that shit. So he like came in and he's like, hey, you know, like, cause he'd make a little money off of some stuff, right? And he'd be like, hey, I got you something. Like, it's no big deal. It's a double stacked ecstasy pill, right? And I'm like, oh wow, shit, I haven't like done one of these like fucking since like 2010, right? And at this time it was 2022. And I'm sure he knew this because he started keeping me supplied in stuff that was the opposite, the antithesis of that shit. I'm talking about meth. And I'm like, well, it's a double stacked pill. I'm like, I can't take that. And he knows how I am, right? Like, she's so like, she's not selfish. That's one thing I know about Laura, right? Which is like, you know, it's just kind of common knowledge that he might have had a plan knowing that I'm also that friend. I am that friend that, you know, she saves her shit. And he knew that like earlier, like in the month, I had bought some acid. So, and he might have even looked in my drawer because like he might have gone into the sea. It's a guarantee that she has a couple hits of acid still in that drawer because she just isn't wasteful like that. But I do give my shit away, like, and he's that way too. Sugar plum fairy, indeed. So I'm like, oh man, I can't take this pill myself. I'll be out of my fucking mind. I haven't done one of these since 2010, and especially like a double stack one. I'm like, you have to split this with me. And like, and you know I have 2 hits of acid in my drawer. Can I hear it? You know it? You know it. He's like, well, I don't know. I don't think I should be doing that. I'm like, He's like, well, I don't know, like, if we should really do that. I'm like, nothing bad can come of that. And then it gets funny. So we split the pill, and we each took a hit of acid. And then I was like, this is where the best part was. There was a time where we're like the best of friends, and like, people don't like keep it on the low that Nick and Laura are the best of friends. But like, also, I was unaware that like I was this old lady for the longest time, and like everybody would say that about me. It's like, well, that's Nick's old lady, you know, like all this stuff. And like, he would never fucking correct them. Never would he fucking dare correct them after saying that. And in certain circles, if somebody says that about you, then you are, honey. But I remember I was getting kind of frisky. I was just like, well, before I got real frisky, earlier, like probably a year prior to that, because we weren't sexually active with each other very often, like less than a handful of times, a few fingers of fucking times did we ever have any kind of like sexual encounter with one another the whole 6 years that I've known him. So I remember one time he came back and he was high on meth or whatever, but he like never seemed like he was, and that was like why I kind of didn't know how much was going on like behind the scenes, but I did know things were going on behind the scenes. And I didn't want to question too much. And I know in hindsight, he really wished that I would have just questioned him more and would have like commanded him to fucking just stay home. I would have said like, listen, you are staying home. But like, I grew up in a family where like, you don't fucking order people to do shit. Like, you let them live their own lives. What he really would have wanted was for me to do what I did that night that we split the ecstasy pill. When I said, hey, and we were sitting on the bed, and this was 2022, before shit got real and things were extremely strict, you know, like full-blown, like W double to the O to the D time. And I sat behind him, and I was always on my mat at this time too. I was just like very into the mat. He has a separate bedroom from me, obviously, where we have like a twin-size bed in there. So he's sitting on the edge of the bed, and I sat behind him, and I put both my arms around him in like the strongest like bear squeeze, and I held him there. And I said, listen. And I held him there, and I kind of like rocked him a little bit, but I held him tight, like up against my chest. And I said, listen, Nick, like, do you remember that one time when you came back and you were like horny, and you said like, will you touch my penis? And I'm like, yeah, sure, like whatever. But then I came up to him, and it's like he expected to have sex, right? And I looked at him, right in the eyes, and I said, listen, I love you, and I love you with my whole heart, but there is no way in hell that I'm gonna let you put your dick inside of me when I know that you and I are both crystal meth addicts. I said, Nick, do you remember that? Do you remember that time that like I told you that like that you are a good dad? Because he has like a adopted son, right? I said, you are a good dad, but I'm like, there's no way that we could, I could get pregnant. There's no way that I could get pregnant right now, and you and I are both doing meth. I'm like, that's just something that I can't allow. I'm like, do you remember? And I held him like so tight, and I said, do you remember when I told you that I loved you so much that I just can't have sex with you? And like he was facing away from me, but I knew like the tears were just like fucking dripping down his face. Tears were just like streaming down his face. That is what respect does to people. So the story gets kind of funny. So then later I'm like, oh, come on, like give me a kiss. I was like, and he's like, no, damn it, like get away from me. He's like, your breath stinks. I'm like, it probably did. But he had to call in the guard technically. I took my shirt off like I do. And I was just like, this is the best night, and I'm not gonna have sex with him anyway, like just to let you know. Like that evening, it was a guarantee that because we just didn't have sex with one another, I was just feeling myself, and I do have a tendency to strip my shirt off sometimes. And I'm like, are you impressed? And he's like, no. So he called his friends. He called Ryan and Chris over. Ryan, who's chronically drunk, but the last time he came over here and tried to take me to the weed dispensary, he was so drunk he was like blacked out. I actually had to call 911 and have them go get him at the weed dispensary. And I think he's still in jail to this day, and I hate having to do that, but there needed to be an opportunity for him to have to go rehabilitate because it was a problem. So he had to like call his two friends over, and I couldn't be like sitting behind him not complying. I said, Nick, I'm going to sit behind you and I'm going to hold you. And I should be on my mat, but I'm not going to comply right now. This is more important that I tell you this. So he calls his friends, and he's like, Laura's here. She's got her shirt off, and she's got her like big boobs in my face, and I don't know what to do. Will you please come distract her? She needs to get back on the mat. And I was so upset. I was like, I can't believe you fucking just called these guys. I'm on acid and like ecstasy, and I haven't been on ecstasy, like I haven't been like this fucking high, and then like here's Ryan's okay, he's just like a drunk, and like hopefully he'll be like reformed soon. The other one like fucking has too much of a dark streak for me, not the person I wanted to see. But I turned the fucking Pink Floyd on, I put my shirt back on, I got on my mat, and all of them were out there on the front porch like they always are, talking to each other, having to rescue Nick from me like fucking taking my shirt off with like, my big boobs like bouncing around all the time, like, and that's typical. So I hope you enjoyed this sermon.